extrinsic stat systems and intrinsic stat systems. Extrinsic stat systems means that your character, I classify in my analysis stat systems like that. Extrinsic systems is precisely that your character depends on an external factor to progress through the game further. Also, good thing for the analysis to know is the developers are well, the developers are yeah. I think amateur people working on this game, every app is full of bugs, so people can know the developers are very bad at coding. Well, District, I see that that's a constant with the community of this game because in my previous stream there was a bug in which I couldn't load into one of the maps, and both instantly flying energies and one more person immediately said welcome, and Phantom I think it was that was here some minutes ago. They said immediately at the same time, at the same time before I said anything, one said the developers are monkeys. The developers are monkeys. Said like instantly. I don't know if it was flying energies or the other person, and the other person said the developers are useless or something like that. Both at the same time. It was like their first reaction, their very first reaction. District. So I see. I already know it's a constant because you are the third person that has that same reaction. Yeah, I think Arameter or something. They doing such a bad job. Yeah, because someone on Thursday, Ambra it was, as I was playing Star Wars: The Republic, he told me, God, thanks to God that today you are not playing Drakensang online. He told me, and I said, no, but why? But if you probably all like me streaming that one a bit more than this one, except for the viewers of Star Wars: The Republic, and he mentioned because it's absolutely broken, I cannot play it, so I need yeah, that he did basically kind of like a change of pace. Patrick, how you doing? Yo, yeah, the updates, community suggestions, and feedback and everything is on the official Drakensang Discord. You can read there. It's very active. There are lots of admins. But the problem is the developers. Patrick, I remembered you at the beginning of the stream that precisely that you didn't like Star Wars: The Republic that much, and told you sorry that on Thursday you dropped and I was playing another game. But basically the thing is that, as I mentioned to Fly Energies as well, I don't like being as kind of like a slave to a single game in that sense, because then it is true that you grow very fast, but then the problem is that you become a slave of that game and you depend on all of that. And you exclusively depend on that game, and I don't like that. Besides, I think it's also unhealthy, because then you don't help anyone expand their horizon of options of games to play. That's basically the reason. But sorry if in that case it's boring because of that too. Yeah. In this game everyone is a slave. Lol. You should use Guardian. It regenerates HP. This one? This guy? I got it some seconds ago. Hang on, District. Give me a sec. In this game, everyone... Well, yeah, that's the thing. But I don't want to further go... Oh, you need the talent for it. Give me a sec, District. Guardian. Ah, yeah, right. 1 point. There. Okay. Your level is too low to unlock the talent. Ah, yeah. Level 30. I need one more level in some minutes. It's not unlocked yet. At level 50? I think it was 1. Could it be? For level 1? For level 1? 30. But does it give the... It's on bottom right. The 0 out of 5 ones. These ones. Ah, yeah, these ones. They have to then unlock them. Okay. No. Don't worry. As I Arcane Guardian. Okay. Arcane Concentration, Blood Mage. 0 out of 5. Fire Blast. Okay, well. Arcane Concentration, that. Okay. Arcane Concentration. Go, got it. Okay, I'll keep it in mind at level 50. Don't worry. Yeah, precisely. Okay, I'll remember that one, and I remember the Frost Nova in a level that Flying Energies mentioned to me. Okay, okay. It's good that you mentioned all of them to me, because I then keep them kind of like in the back of my head, and 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 then do all of that. I was mentioning precisely that, well, I don't want to make that slave relationship even worse in that sense. But as I said, sorry if any of the other games as variety streamer, Patrick, that I get to are not kind of like maybe as good as Drakensang for all of the ones that have that slave mentality in that sense. But use always Guardian. Is your best friend. Okay, District. Okay. I will go with the Guardian. I'll remember to spam the Guardian then. Then I will increase the duration. But first I want to enhance the Frost Nova that Flying Energies told me, because he mentioned that it breaks the armor and helps kill them quite fast. So in that sense, the topic of analysis for today that I was mentioning this trick precisely was that um, I classify the games, isometric action RPGs, between intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems, basically, depending on the source of the increases of the base attack damage. That's why I ask you all of those questions at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of some minutes ago when I saw you immediately, because I mentioned 5 consequences depending on which of the two systems it has. As I was mentioning, for any of you watching this as a YouTube VOD, and just so you have a context as well. You should also join the Discord and take a look at how things are going there. The official Discord of the game you mentioned. Yeah, I can join them. I can join them, no problem. To be up to date. Yeah. Yeah, then I will join it. Then it will also help me. They probably also have guides and those things as well, in that sense. So, yeah. I also, by the way, District, I received some guild invitations. It wasn't you or anyone you know, right? Because I declined it, right? Yes, there are guides 0 to hero channel. Yeah, just in that case, no, it wasn't me. Okay, perfect. That's all I need to know. Perfect. I just wanted to know if it was you with another ult. Perfect. Got it. Patrick, if you hit level 100 and start maxing your character, the only things that matters in is the max crit of the game, which is 450k, and a 3.6 speed, so you can start stack your damage buff automatically, and this trick says true to that, of course. Okay, the attacks, it's like Path of Exile then, huh? It's quite similar to Path of Exile. I did that with Path of Exile, and I could beat the main story, and it was hard. It was hard, and I could beat it with that combination, with increasing the attack speed. Yes, I know it, Patrick, but I was mentioning that in my classification of stat systems of RPGs, precisely, I divide them between intrinsic and extrinsic, depending on the source of increasing the base attack damage. I know that then there are secondary stats, in that sense, that complement that. For example, I always cite Diablo 3, that it increases the damage proportionately with the percentage, in that sense. However, that percentage of crit in all isometric action RPG games doesn't work. It doesn't proportionately increase the base attack damage correctly if the base attack damage doesn't increase. Correct? If I do 200% attack increase of 0, it would be still 0. You should enable advanced stats in settings. Yes, so I can see those things. So even if I increase the percentage by 200%, think about this one, Patrick. So you see the stats better on your items. More or less. Equipment, tooltip, and character tooltip. Yeah, like in World of Warcraft. Default view, advanced, like that. That should do it. Let me see. Did I confirm? Yes, there we go. I was mentioning precisely in terms of the stat system, I will come back. Then tell me, please. I need a shower. Yeah, no problem, Patrick. No problem, Patrick. Then otherwise, you can. The ball is recorded. I explained all of it at the beginning of the ball. It's all recorded. In the first hour, I went over all of it. No problem. See, now you see them better. Okay. I was mentioning precisely. I'll use the comment anyways to mention it. Imagine that you increase 200% extra crit and attack speed of your base attack damage, but your base attack damage is 0. As a direct consequence of that, it's still 0. That's why I mentioned at the beginning that I use the base stat, the base damage as the primary stat to establish the stat system classification at the beginning, precisely. As I said, it's in the ball if anyone is interested in the 5 talking points that I did, with all of the consequences that it has, the impact on the level design, making it more grindy, etc. Basically, I use the base attack value. If the source of the base attack value is extrinsic, that means it's external to the character itself. It's an extrinsic system because you depend on the loot, the winter cape, on leveling. What you are mentioning is the intrinsic system. This one, when you level up, it increases the base attack damage, right, District? It does increase it, like when you level up. It does increase the base attack damage. So that, yes, that is here with the information he's giving me, people, anyone watching this as a YouTube ball, we can see that that's the intrinsic portion of in the framework of the stat system of the game. The intrinsic portion. Pay attention to this. When you level up, that factor, that element of the stat system is internal to the character. Is internal to the character. You level up and you increase the base attack damage. Another example is the one that I asked him previously, this wisdom skill tree that we will unlock in some minutes, and we'll inspect it. It also increases the stats. So that portion, those two things, that portion is what I classify as the intrinsic portion of the stat system. And then, of course, the loot, all of the pieces of gear that are external, that provide an external source to increase the base attack damage, also the crit and the attack speed, as Patrick mentioned. But the primary stat is the base attack power, because still the 200% increase of critical damage out of 0 base attack damage is still 0. That's why the primary stat that I use for this comparison is the base attack damage. So that is the external part of the stat system. That's the external part of the stat system. No game, or quite few examples use pure extrinsic or pure intrinsic systems. Most of them use a combination, and the degree of efficiency in that combination is what will make the game good or bad in its stat system. The degree of efficiency in that proportion. As I've said some minutes ago as one of the 5 conclusions. You want the game to be easy to learn, but hard to master. You generally start with the intrinsic system being enough to finish the main story, the ideal scenario, and then the extrinsic system comes into play to complement that original state, basically. In that sense. Pretty much, the idea is that you start increasing the base attack damage through the attributes, correct? But then the extrinsic system shines during the end game. The extrinsic system shines during the end game. The risk of not having a proper... Okay, here, correct, District. That is what that's the key, District. I always try to rationalize all of those things that we take for granted. For example, District, I am rationalizing it, but I bet you haven't heard about this up to now. because I put the effort to rationalize it in that sense. I put the effort to rationalize it in that sense. So we take all of those things for granted, and actually it takes a lot of development effort, and that's what actually makes the game so good, to be addictive, and to be so loved by the players like you, District, in that sense. But people don't rationalize it. That's the key. That's what precisely I do in that sense. Okay, here says Patrick. I was mentioning, Patrick, precisely that the crit that you mentioned in the previous message, even if you increase crit by 300%, if the base attack damage is 0, then it's still 0. That's why I do a classification system for the stat system of isometric action RPG games every time I start a new analysis of a game, in that sense. And I classify them between intrinsic and extrinsic. Extrinsic means that there's a source that increases the base attack damage of your character externally compared to your character. In other words, basically the loot. That's the extrinsic portion of the stat system. And then I was asking District about the intrinsic portion, because it's a bit harder to see. And he told me that precisely every time you level up, the base damage increases, and there's also a wisdom skill tree that precisely increases the base attack damage. So I do that classification, and I use the base attack damage because generally in isometric action RPG games you have either strength for the warrior, for the barbarian in the case of Diablo 2, you have intelligence for the mage, and dexterity for the rogue, the classic naming convention of Dungeons and Dragons, inherited from Dungeons and Dragons. And that's the intrinsic stat system of the game. Now, all games have a combination of them. Hey, it looks like there's a boss there. Or what? I bet we'll have to come back here. So, okay, I will ask questions now, because I'm interested. It's basically a classification I do. It's basically the classification I do, because most game... It has a lot of consequences that I mentioned at the beginning. You will see that you will be interested, because, for example, now I get to the next message. It is quite interesting. I mentioned precisely at the beginning that, for example, a lot of people take it for granted, and anyone watching this as a YouTube bot may also think it's a silly topic. But, for example, one of my conclusions was that the external system, the fact that you depend on loot to progress through the game, does affect the structure of the level design. For example, you mentioned me in the previous stream that you needed which was the name, District? The Cape of Winter. The Winter Cape. You mentioned to me that you needed the Winter Cape, Patrick, I think. Well, there you can see the structure of the level design is being affected by this abstract, boring, stupid theory system. There you can see a connection. You are being forced to loot that because the developers designed an extrinsic system. The base stats of your character are dependent on the loot rather than the internal attributes. See how it had a consequence. I read now you care about it and you are interested. Okay, District. Then, after level 100 and maximum wisdom, damage comes from more items, basically from items, gems, jewel, runes, and dragon crest trinket. By the way, have you discovered the pet shop? I was told by Ambra the other day how to use the shop, more or less. He told me to get the inventory expansion slots. It's in city. No, then I haven't. I discovered this one to expand the inventory. He mentioned to me that there's a thing to increase your inventory at a lower price, and I saw it, and I took a screenshot. So in that sense, through here, there's a pet that gives experience increase. Oh, that would be interesting. Do I have enough money? More or less. Do I have enough money? More or less. Then we can do it. We can once in some minutes, once I finish the quest, or maybe we can do it right now. Yeah, basically, I'm forced to buy capes so I can obtain a mythic set to be stronger because my ranger is max. If you sell items, yes, collect all items and sell. Okay, district, you can then guide me to the pet if you don't mind. I don't want to make you lose. I don't want to make you waste your time as well. If maybe you are playing and watching the stream on a second screen or something. Well, Patrick, there you have the example. That's why all of the theory that I mentioned, I always mention that it has a correlation. It's in any city, very easy to find. Okay, then let's do it right now. Let's do it right now if I have the money. Let's see. Anyways, I have to go back and report my findings, as you can see there. But well, as I was mentioning precisely, Patrick, see that there is a relationship. It, an external system of items affects the level design. It makes the game much more grindy. Think about, for example, Borderlands or Monster Hunter or any game that depends on the external loot. That's why I mentioned 5 talking points that precisely rationalize, that explain all of those. Okay, pet shop. Which one is it? District. So I more or less press M to see it. Pet shop would be. I'm kind of like looking for the picture of a doggy or something like that. Hmm. Any city? This one, maybe it's a smaller encampment. I can go to Kings Hill maybe. I bet in Kings Hill. Yeah, go to Kings Hill. Yeah, I bet in Kings Hill it's there in Kings Hill. Look at this district. I now know how to navigate the map. I learned how to navigate the map district. Look at that. Look at that. I can put that as an achievement. Uh, okay. Easy. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if there's some kind of pet over here through something. This guy maybe? Blacksmith? No, I bet it's not this guy. It has to have. I'm looking for kind of like the face of a doggy or something like that. In that sense. This one? Crafting master? No. Maybe any of those. The horse shit icon is on the left side. Horse? The horse icon. I don't know what. The horse icon, yeah. I think I see it. I think I see it. I think I see it. Yeah, it's kind of like the. Yeah, the. Tamer, that one. Yeah, that. View selection. Oh, damn it, I was so close. No, but those are mounts. Eh, K. Movement speed. Experience when defeating enemies. This one? These are pets, and you need Jindo. The little doggy. 10% experience. Okay. Okay, yeah. The other ones cost the other, the real. Okay. But I don't have the gold. Need a minute. Sell items always. Okay. Okay. It contains gems. Yes, I've already switched it for one much better. Oh, improved item. This one. Well, this one as well. This one I don't think I will need them. Diamond fire. Let's just sell all of these thingies. Pretty much. Okay. Yeah. Does this one convert to this one in that sense, or are they kind of like separated? It is. No, they are not. They're kind of like completely separated. The items, the economic system of the game here, when compared to the other one. Okay, I get it. Okay, I'll have that one marked. Okay, separate. Perfect. Is there one that, because there was one that was smaller, that was cheaper in that sense? No. Okay, 99. Okay, and it doesn't provide that one. Okay, so at least 800 for this one, but it's so close to this one. Okay, I get it. I get it. Don't worry, I get it. Okay. I'll remember this one. I'll remember this one. Okay. It's very easy to get if you sell items. Perfect. Perfect. I'll then get to that. The thing is that my inventory gets kind of like filled most of the time, and that's the problem. But I'll try to do that one. Yes, because look at this, they are increasing in price. Okay. I was remembering that the first items were much more, were much cheaper. Were much cheaper in that sense. These ones are a bit more pricey to make some money. Okay, I get it, District. Thank you. Patrick, what do you think? Which stat system is better? Level 45 Drakensang Online. Okay, there was no locks in the stat system. You couldn't just max your character because the game was way harder and slower, so you had to farm constantly to get better. Or the current one, which I mentioned, much easier, much faster to get the best. I don't know if it makes sense. I just freestyle. No. I was mentioning that as precisely my fifth talking point earlier. I mentioned it. The ideal situation, people. What do you think it would be the ideal situation? I mentioned it as one of the talking points precisely. That's why I mentioned it. If I mentioned all of that at the beginning, not at the beginning. Roughly half an hour in, when I started getting into the conclusions of the stat system. I think that objectively the most efficient system has proven to be Blizzard's style. Why? Because the motto, easy to learn, hard to master, is still has still proven to be the most efficient one at capturing the attention of the player, retaining it, and without being unfair, without feeling completely unfair. What's what I would mention specifically in that case? I was mentioning to District precisely. I don't know if I think you weren't there in that moment. That you start with an intrinsic system. Remember what I explained? You remember what I pretty much what I said some minutes ago? The intrinsic system, you increase the base attack damage of the character through leveling up and affecting strength, intelligence, dexterity, etc. The base stats of the game, or with a skill tree like the wisdom tree here that increases. The base attack damage is increased through internal factors to the character, correct? And then the extrinsic system, the loot, basically. The loot. Let's just say the loot. There are some other examples, but let's reduce it to the loot for the sake of simplicity. What is the best scenario in that sense? To start with the intrinsic system, allowing the player to beat the main story on the lowest difficulty, on normal difficulty, without crazy farming, a bit of farming, but not crazy farming, through the internal system that I mentioned, through the intrinsic system, basically through experience, increasing strength, intelligence or dexterity, and without the extrinsic system. Then, for a second run on a higher difficulty, think about Diablo with Hell difficulty or Nightmare difficulty or Hellgate London, or Borderlands on second difficulty, on veteran difficulty. Think about those, and then for the second run, for the endgame gameplay mechanics, for the portion of the endgame gameplay mechanics, then apply the extrinsic system. Then apply a proportion of the extrinsic system to the endgame part of the game, in that sense. And force the player. I cited the example of Cromarax the Invincible. It's basically the final secret boss of Borderlands 1. That you have it even over at YouTube in case you don't know what I'm talking about at all. In that case, if you never played Borderlands at all. Other examples of the extrinsic system are Monster Hunter, for example, or Destiny 1 and 2, or Hellgate London, which is the hidden predecessor of Borderlands, I highly recommend to you. District, regarding the game recommendations. I recommend you London 2038. I recommend you London 2038. The community revived the servers, and basically you can play online like this one. The community manager of that game is in my Discord, and basically I can assure you, London 2038, you will feel at home with something like Drakensang. I highly recommend it to you, London 2038. The problem is that you will need to get the discontinued physical version of the game, which is not sold anymore at all. You need to get it and apply the mod on top of it. But because there was a huge license issue, that's why the community revived it. But London 2038, in that sense, it's free because the game is not sold anymore, as far as I know, and basically you will get endless hours if you apply that mod to it. I highly recommend you London 2038. Look what I'm going to tell you. I don't know if it will make you quit Drakensang, at least for some weeks. The only thing is that it doesn't have the isometric camera. It has a camera kind of like behind the character. That could be a problem. But yeah, regarding going back to the topic, what would be the perfect system then? One that starts with the intrinsic elements of the stat system, just experience, increasing those, you can finish the main story, and then the end game. That's where the extrinsic portion shines. The case of Chromorax the Invincible, that you have the fight over at YouTube in case you're interested to see the point that I always make, because I always cite that game. You cannot beat that boss fight without a specific sniper rifle, or one or two are able to do so. Forcing the loot, like with the Winter Cape, with the endgame, like they are doing here. But the thing is that you mentioned that the Winter Cape here is tied to an event. Well, I wouldn't tie it to an event. I would tie it to a dungeon. And make it, I don't know, make the player run the dungeon one or two times. I bet, for example, District, that Diablo Immortal does that, because that system is the one that Blizzard created. And I think it has proven throughout time that is the most efficient out of all of them. Then we can discuss if, for example, the percentage of the probability of that loot in the dungeon. I would. Then you have to pretty much with some fine-grained control adjust that. But basically that would be the idea. Instead of an event, tie the extrinsic portion of the gameplay mechanics to dungeons. That's what, for example, World of Warcraft did, and what Star Wars The Republic copied, for example. And I think throughout time it has proven to be the most efficient system, because in all of the games that I'm mentioning were the most commercially successful on the one hand, and they are also as well quite well regarded by the community. Basically, World of Warcraft has created a level of addiction unseen, just like well, this game can potentially do so as well with Drakensangonline. But the World of Warcraft is always cited as kind of like the prime example of creating that system. Don't know if it was more or less interesting, Patrick, in that sense. Basically, I can do the dungeon without the cape, only 60 rounds. With the cape, I could even play 150 rounds, even to get the set. Much more chance. Well, that's the thing. But they are first forcing you to get the cape. And for that you need to do an event, District told me. You need to be in an event. And events are tying, in that sense. They have a component of time, of being timed. And well, because of that, they are forcing you to play at a specific moment. I think that, for example, is unneeded. I think that, for example, is unneeded. Is unneeded because you are tying the extrinsic system that I mentioned to basically to forcing the player to log at a specific time rather than the skill of the player or whatever. And maybe because of the player's job or that they are studying or whatever, I don't think it's a fair system. And that can cause the player to frustrate because imagine you have to I don't know, that week you have to, I don't know, celebrate your birthday or you have to do something at work or whatever, and for whatever reason you are celebrating your birthday and you say, no, I cannot log in to play Drakensang, or I have to finish this for my job, or I have to finish this for school, or whichever reason it may be. Imagine that. And you cannot log in. You just can't log in. You miss the event. You miss the cape. And because of that, you then cannot farm the dungeon. I am still, as developer, completely conditioning, I am forcing the player to log at a specific time, and I think that's not an efficient system because I'm forcing something that should happen naturally, which is the player playing the game. In that sense, if you are maxed, your time is only worth when the dragon event and big game hunt is coming. 2 years, I think, each, something like that. Every other event and farmable thing is useless. Well, but at the end of the day, I'm forcing the player to log. I'm forcing the player to log to do those events and get that gear that you all want so much. So in that sense, I think that affects the stat system of the game negatively. In that sense, I think that it's quite positive to that a specific piece of loot, as we discussed the other day, I think it's positive that a specific piece of loot is special to you, that you had to do a quite important boss fight to get it, especially if it's ending gear in terms of the stat system. But I think that timing it to an event is not the best, because in that sense the only thing that you are doing is trying to delay the farming of the player in a very artificial way. I bet for you feel that waiting for an event is an artificial way of making the loot harder. In that sense, while I like that the loot, I think the player psychologically needs to be the big, huge, tough monster to get the loot. I don't think it should be tied to logging in at a specific time for an event, because precisely that, I bet you end up thinking that it's quite artificial. I don't know what you think, but it's generally a quite artificial way of enhancing the difficulty of the loot, and I don't like enhancing the difficulty artificially. I always think I always say that it needs to be organic and natural. If it's in a dungeon, even if the let's say let's say I I give you a 20% chance, I don't know, a 10% chance of looting the winter cape from the dungeon instead of the event. You would still play the game and would farm with even more intensity probably than the timed event, because you know that if you farm it enough, it will end up dropping. But if I tie to an event, I am forcing the player as developer to just log in at a specific time, and I think that one is not a fair system. in that sense. It needs to be hard, yes, of course, because it needs to be special to you afterwards. It needs to remind you of your victory against that boss or whatever. But you should be able to try that anytime. That's what I would say. I don't know what you think. I don't know what you think, but I would do that in that sense. I think that's the perfect ideal system. Like letting the player try all the time with difficulty. With difficulty. With difficulty. In that sense. Back in the days. Or back in the day. Wisdom talents. You have unlocked wisdom talents. Yeah, what District mentioned to me some minutes ago. Let's get to it. Back in the days, level 45 and 50 times. You could farm the gears you need in random maps like parallel worlds, which you get the port to when you are level 50. Okay, so you could farm them all the time. So every bit of your time in-game gets you towards your goals in stats. And the event Gears was OP too, but not a huge game changer like now. Well, precisely. Then you agree with me what I have mentioned. Precisely. Because that, what you're describing, is a philosophy that was so popular with World of Warcraft. You could feel that your time spent in game made sense all the time. I know I need 31 for now. Okay, so this is the wisdom skill tree that District mentioned. This one is the one that affects the stats. Yeah, basically it was perfect. Yes, but the keys to get to why it was perfect is because of what I mentioned to you precisely. As I said, that a perfect and ideal system is making the loot hard, but not tying it, not conditioning, not forcing, not forcing the player to log in as a necessary condition at a specific time, logging in at a specific time as a necessary condition to get the winter cape. Because I already have you and District and others tell me that without that you just cannot progress. That is precisely exponentially exaggerating the extrinsic portion of the stat system, of the boring stat system that I mentioned at the beginning. Precisely. It's at the end of the day, it's exponentially exaggerating that system to a point that is negative, that it has a negative impact on the gameplay mechanics. So that's the key. That's why I analyze games, because you tell me, yes, it was perfect. The key is to getting us to why. Why? Always ask yourselves why, people. If you want the best advice in life I could ever give anyone watching this as a YouTube blog, is why. Why things happen? Why is it that you perceived the original system as perfect and this one not? Precisely because of what we've been describing. Because exponentially exaggerating the extrinsic stat system of the game through timed events implies forcing the player to log in at a specific times and causing the reaction of thinking that at the end of the day, well, unless you log in at that specific moment to loot that specific item, to then farm the dungeons, it's wasted time. The time is wasted then afterwards, in that sense. And only the 2 seconds in which you loot that thing, well, they were worth it. Back then, as Patrick was describing precisely, the system implemented by Blizzard, that's why I mentioned it as the best when you asked me about it, is the best because it's easy to learn. You can start with the intrinsic portion, just like in this game, but then the extrinsic portion of the end game, except quite specific cases, the main progression of the extrinsic system in the endgame was, as you described, back in the days, you could farm the gears you need in random maps, you could farm it, all the time was worth it in game. They were still hard to get, I bet, Were those gears that you are mentioning hard to? I bet they were hard to get, anyways. I bet they were hard to get. Like the probability. I bet it was low of those gears because it's a system of World of Warcraft. It was low in most games back in the days. Back in the day, in that sense. Maybe you had a 20% chance of drop or 10% chance of drop or even put a 5% chance of dropping. Yes, yeah, one unique gear was months, okay. But it was constant. You could do it constantly. That is the key. That is the key. That's the key that I'm mentioning. It was months. In Star Wars: The Republic, it was the same. People, it was the very same. And in World of Warcraft, the same because it was that system. Um, but it was constant. You felt precisely that it was based on your perseverance rather than the lack of being on at the specific moment that you need to be to farm the item at the specific place in game. That is the case. It's a different philosophy, and I wanted to highlight it because it has a lot of consequences, as I mentioned at the beginning. Making the game extremely grindy on that department, without properly measuring all of those things, can discourage players keep keep playing the game, from to continue playing the game, basically. In that sense, the loot and the difficulty needs to be like the difficulty. It needs to be hard to get during endgame, but dependent on the consistency, the how constant the player is, rather than being at a specific event. In that sense, the perfect system would be that. And the early game gameplay mechanics based on the intrinsic system of the game, getting experience and increasing the stats. Another consequence is that it makes it unnecessarily grindy. As I said, MMORPGs need to be grindy, but not to the point it discourages the person from playing. That's why I said that it's more important to allow the player to constantly be able to try. It has to take months, as he's mentioning, to have the proper psychological impact of the sense of progression on the player's mind. The correct psychological reward punishment system. I mentioned this as my third talking point today. The psychological effects of it, but never tied to the impossibility. If the player is logged into the game, he needs to have the possibility of at least trying, even if he fails. If he fails, that's another story. If you fail, well, that's another story. You need to try harder, get better gear, design a different strategy. No problem at all. But then, he needs to have the feeling of having the constant opportunity. If you take that out, the time events take that out. You don't have the constant opportunity, the feeling of having a constant opportunity. I think that distorts the objective psychological effect of the sense of progression and the economic reward punishment system of the game. It's not properly punishing and rewarding you perfectly. That's the key, as I've said. So, with my 5 conclusions on this, I think we made a pretty amazing, almost 3 hours analysis of the stats system today. Then, of course, we get to the final analysis. But as for this topic of today, it was pretty well covered. Besides, this trick gave me the the extra details on the intrinsic portion of the stat system, how it increases the base attack damage. So perfect. And I thought that there would be so many of them. If they can make them so quickly, as I said, first stop the cultists from creating new seal destroyers. I have a hunch that you are going to need to destroy the great globes that I saw hanging above the crystal tables in the old monastery slab. While you're at it, you try to find version for the. Okay, we got that. Uh, okay, let's get to this one next. Let's get to this one. Let's do some of the side quests because today we've done mostly main story. Let's do some of them. So basically that, people, as a wrap up, as a conclusion for anyone watching this as a YouTube VOD, basically the idea is that games have an intrinsic and extrinsic portion of the stat system in the framework of the stat system, and that can greatly affect the impact of the level on the level design, because if it's the more grindy uh, it is due to because of the precisely the stat system that the developers chose for the game, precisely in that sense. As I've said, there are intrinsic systems and there are extrinsic systems, and each game has a proportion of them. And this is something that game reviewers in a lot of cases sadly don't rationalize. They just don't even think about it. Next topic. Next topic. Well, it will be on next Tuesday, basically, which will be the economic reward, the relationship of this with the economic part of the game, the reward punishment system. The reward punishment system. I love talking about that topic. How does it reward or punish the player with the economic system? For example, in Sacred 2, Patrick, it's also a German game that I played and analyzed. In that one, the game had an internal clock system, in which when you got killed, for example, imagine you get killed, you lose what I call the cost of opportunity. The cost of opportunity, well, not that I call this an economic concept, the cost of opportunity. The amount of time that you spent going up to the boss, fighting the boss, not killing it, and getting your ass handed back to you. Basically, in layman terms, basically that's the thing. The time you lost trying to beat the boss and you didn't, for example, you lose that. Then you also lose in that game that internal clock system. It's reset, and when the internal clock system is reset, then you get much worse loot. And because of that, then it can create a negative economic proportion when you go to buy potions, because you basically loot shitty gear when you get killed, basically. Hey, we already finished 2 side quests. This is way too fast. You basically loot shitty gear in Sacred 2 if you get killed because the clock was reset, and because of that, you can get to a point, if you get killed repeatedly, then you cannot even buy potions, creating a negative economic proportion of the reward punishment system. And I will analyze that topic in Drakensang. Yes, all the topics would be much more interesting if we could get a legacy server. Now every topic of this game is terrible. No, but we can make the comparison. Yeah, you clearly miss the old system of the game. The same happens to me, I understand you, because it happens to me with Star Wars Your Republic. But you would say that all of the crazy things that I analyze would be all much better with the old version of the game, with the legacy servers. But now you clearly don't like the systems that they implemented. Well, look at the bright side. Then we can criticize all of those aspects endlessly. But no. It has some good aspects, some bad aspects, like everything in life, in that sense. Um, it 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 has some positive aspects and some negative aspects in that sense. For example, I was mentioning in one of the first streams that, uh, believe it or not, when I did the genre classification, for example, Um, yeah, I can't tell you a bad thing about the level 45. I can about the level 50 and 55 era. No, but for example, even if the game isn't in the best state, for example, look at this. For example, I mentioned in some of the first streams that in the generation, in the era that this game was released, it was a quite convoluted era for the isometric action RPG genre, because it was making the transition from 2D to 3D. Basically, Diablo 2 left a void after being the king of the genre, pretty much. And I could name you. In fact, I did so. I named some games in some of the first streams. I think you weren't in them. In that sense, I named the following games. Okay, the following games: Loki. Loki. I know they are all games that you and most people haven't heard about and shouldn't know about because they were kind of like failures. Let's say Loki, The Hand of God, Space Siege, the successor of Dungeon Siege. In all of those games, for example, in that period of time, the late, uh, the late 2000s, think about 2008, even 2006, let's say half of the generation, except for Titan Quest that solved the problem I'm going to describe, they all had a terrible point and click system. It was not exact. In that sense, this game has a quite amazing point and click system for the time it was released in, because it was a huge problem back then in that sense. The point and click system, Space Siege, The Hand of God, Loki, and many more isometric action RPG games, namely Diablo clones, are not precise when you point and click like this in that era, because it was a problem. And in that sense, the fact that this game still has that makes it still, for example, a quite amazing point and click control as well, in that sense. So even if the stat system may be broken, even if, I don't know, the they force you to of course, basically farm for that cape, and as I've said, it's a mechanic that that can be improved, and etc. In that sense, um, there are always some elements that explain why all of you love the game so much, and what I do is rationalize them, basically. Is the only difference. In that sense, you all unconsciously perceive it. For example, when you point and click, would you say that the point and click system is not precise of the game, for example? No, it is precise. Like, you can see that the character moves to the spot I am ordering it to move to. And I know it may sound like a silly topic, but if you don't get that right, the whole abstract complexity of the gameplay mechanics it goes to shit. The game is completely broken. Or, for example, the usage of potions, the relationship between the usage of potions and the gameplay mechanics. When I fought Callis, for example, the fact that I had to position myself with those red orbs to actually get some healing and survive the fight added a natural source of difficulty that is not derived from just spamming potions. For example, there is a game called Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, I mentioned this, that simply allows you to finish the game spamming potions. It's not the case with this one. So it has some aspects that were properly balanced back in the day and still are in that sense. For example, I know we take them for granted. That's why it may sound silly, boring, or whatever to you or anyone else watching this as a YouTube bot. But I always mention this. The most evident aspects that we take for granted are the ones that have the highest abstract complexity to develop on the side of the developer, and what I take into account when qualifying a game and judging it in that sense. The fact that you point and click and the system is exact means that they got the basics right, if you know what I mean. The basics were correct and still are. For example, if I've only spent five days playing the game, but it's one of the first things I can see. The physics are precise. The physics are precise. For a period of time, that's the problem that most people cannot imagine, that in this period of time, back in 2008, 2010, it wasn't that common to find isometric action RPG games with an exact point-and-click system. For example, one of the things in that sense that, as you can see, persists even in the current version of the game. In that sense, if you think about those small things, they are still good. For example, the fact that in the Calix boss fight, I was forced to position, to grab those orbs. It's an amazing influence of the level design on the gameplay mechanics, because the source of the difficulty was natural. They could have just let me spam potions endlessly and kill the boss without any kind of issue. And no, instead, they forced me to kind of like position myself correctly to avoid some of the attacks. Those things that we take for granted, are subtle aspects that we need, that make the game extremely addictive at the end of the day, and why you're playing it constantly. And you mentioned to me previously that in this game everyone is a slave or something like that. I remember. Precisely, I rationalize why someone would have the psychological intention of playing the game for so many hours. I rationalize it and verbalize it in that sense on stream, and I think it helps a lot. It helps a lot, because when you only actually are free from any limitation in knowledge when you can explain why something happens. Not how it happens, but why something happens, because it's the final cause that created the existence of that phenomenon in that sense. So that's why I analyze games in that sense. Sorry always if it's somehow boring at some point or another, but it's precisely my passion. It's precisely my passion, and trust me, I can tell you that a lot of people love it. For example, as you can read from the description, the developer of Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Shard, and the developer of Haven Cast Rise of the Mage were two of my first viewers, and they precisely were thankful about. They were precisely thankful about me playing the games like this. Everyone is AFK in cities, reading, DC, waiting, reading, disconnecting, waiting for content. We only play on events, which are, useless but nostalgic because of all the maps. Yeah, that's the case. That's the case. But for example, with Star Wars: Your Republic, I could say the same, but I enjoy the gameplay mechanics. For example, the PvP. Flying Energies told me it was broken. For example, the PvP, because warriors could one-hit kill, spin anyone else. For example, but even with all of those defects, trust me, if you consider the release date, this game was an achievement back in 2010. Even if then the rest of the aspects might have not been that perfect. and I can still see in that sense, because you told me that the original version, yes, it was perfect for you and everything. I can tell you this, even if it's lacking content, I can see why you were all originally addicted to it, regardless of the version. It's because the basics were done right. That's what I can tell you. I've I've analyzed a lot of games, trust me, and the basics were done correctly. Then, of course, for the end game, they can fuck up, not have enough content, all of the things that you are mentioning, all valid points. Um, but the key is that I want to get to what made it so amazing. What made it so amazing in that sense. For example, in Star Wars: The Republic, I could say that I'm in the same situation, that I did everything the game had to offer, and for example, I still PvP. I still do player versus player combat, or a raid, or whatever. In that sense, because I enjoy the gameplay mechanics. So I enjoy the gameplay mechanics. It is true that, as I've said always, as I've always said, sorry, the the healthiest situation is, and that's why I stream variety precisely, and that's why I stream variety precisely, to expand the horizon of everyone, and actually play several games, of course, because otherwise you cannot establish objective comparisons if you only play one game, like what happened to me with Star Wars: The Republic. I didn't stop playing, I always mention this, I didn't stop playing Star Wars: The Republic for 10 years, uh, because I got tired of it, as you all probably don't get tired of Drakensang, because even after all you mentioned, you tell me that you still come back for the events, for the Winter Cape, for example. And it's not that I got tired, it was because I felt that I was not giving enough attention to other genres, for example. For example, in that sense, or to do a raid with friends in your guild, Patrick, things like those, in that sense. So there's always a reason to come back to the game with those. For example, in that sense. Okay, people, time flew with all of my friends visiting me throughout the stream and the things that we've analyzed. Time just flew. We're already at the 3 hour mark. God damn it! It's just that I see, people. This is the 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 joy of streaming, that you that you get to talk to so many people. That, in that sense, is absolutely fascinating. Okay, people, let's wrap this up. We've already done the conclusions and everything. I need to remember the pet that District told me, the the inventory expansion slot. Fortunately, they use different currencies, so the gold will be for the pet, and the Underman will be for the expansion the inventory expansion that Ambra told me. In that sense, so I'll distribute them. The Prince's Sword. Well done. I hope you understand why such measures had to be taken. Our enemy will stop at nothing, if we don't do all that is within our power, then we will surely be pulverized. The walls of King's Hill are no longer as strong as when my ancestors raised them. To ensure that they do not fall to a horde of mindless beasts, we must destroy the enemy catapults before it's too late. Okay, this is the main quest, right? This is the main quest, correct? Has to be the main quest in that sense. Could be. No, but first let me turn in the quest so we get the experience. It should be here. Let me turn in the quests so we get the experience, and then we go back. The old shield. You found my shield, but it's broken. And Hugo? What became of him and the rest? Did they make it? The fortress had been too lightly defended for years, and the cultists, we knew too little, and it seems we returned too late. Okay, we're done with that one. Then journal. Oh no, the golden horn. Good. These beasts have slain countless men and deserve to drink from their own. There we go. Which one else? Which one else needing it? Bring the floor to Kenneth. There we go. Let me turn in these ones, people, and we progress. We deliver the floor, the flower. Sorry, the floor there. The flower is inedible. That's terrible news. Well, there we go. Okay, so we turn in those. No, I don't know how to finish that quest. I forgot to ask that. Slay the leader of the dragon cultists, but sabotage 3 catapults. Okay, this one, didn't we do this one? Okay. Why is it that I didn't finish that one? Why? Why? That's the thing. In that sense. I should have done that one. Okay. Okay, people. So next time, as as a preview, we will continue with the. So what do you think about the wisdom tree? I unlocked it, district. I unlocked it. I saw that the percentages were quite drastic. They were quite drastic. So far I was mentioning it to Patrick some minutes ago, district. I think I am beginning to find the reasons why you will love this game so much. I know that a lot of you, for example, don't like the old how the game has devolved with the pay-to-win elements, but I said it back then and I say it again. This game got the basics right in a period of time. It was one of the first streams, just in case you missed it, and we'll develop more with pay-to-win elements. It's getting crazy. Yeah. I can see why that none of you, Flying Energies, Ambra, Patrix a minute ago, none of you like. At least I can count 5 people so far in only 5 days. In only 5 days that I've streamed only 4 hours, I can tell that the glory days are still remembered by all of you. In that sense, the community of Star Wars The Republic, for example, is not that crazy about it. They are more accepting of the changes. In that sense, not my case. I am on the same boat as all of you. In that sense, I'm on the grumpy. We could be called the old school grumpy guys club. In that sense, but yes, I can see that. But I can still. I was mentioning that I can still see the elements that made this game great. Without a doubt, I mentioned that in some of the first streams that that precisely the elements that made all of you fall in love with it, I can see them precisely. I can see them there, still there. I mentioned that back in the late 2000s, it wasn't that common to have a perfect point-and-click system like this game. So first of all, that's a huge achievement. I know that it may sound silly, district, and nowadays that all of the games are precise in their point-and-click movement, but I was citing the following cases. Very weird and games that no one has ever heard about. Loki, the Hand of God, and for example Space Siege were all from the same period of time as this game, meaning they had the same tools, and this one is far superior. It still uses the same engine, that hasn't changed. So the system that they created back then was amazing, without a doubt, because only Titan Quest and this game, pretty much from this period of time, have this precision in the point-and-click system in a 3D environment. Back in 2010, when this one was released, and 2008, it was pretty much either Diablo or Titan Quest, and the rest as I've said, Loki, The Hand of God, the Space Age, and if I search, there are some more. The point-and-click system wasn't this precise, and this is not a new feature. So I can by now see why you love this game so much, and I am happy that I could, you all, because Flying Energies as well and the rest, but most of all you suggested it to me to play. I can see that it has objective elements that make it quite amazing. I was mentioning about the end game then, that the ideal system, because all of you mentioned to me that you need the winter cape precisely to progress. I wouldn't tie. I wouldn't tie. I wouldn't force the player to log in at a specific moment. That's what I would change, first of all. I wouldn't force the player to log in at a specific moment for an event to benefit from the extrinsic stat system. That means getting a boost in the base attack stat or whatever, getting a stat boost through the loot through an event by being forced to log in at a specific time. I would tie it to a dungeon with maybe a grindy, relatively low percentage. Let's say you have to farm a dungeon in which you have a 10% chance to get the winter cape, for example, or something like that. But I wouldn't tie it to a timed event every 2 years. I think you all mentioned to me that that it happens. In that sense, that is the problem I would highlight, and as a direct consequence of the pay-to-win mechanics and the Chinese company taking over instead of, for example, Radon Labs, the original team, with big hand games, precisely the original developer in that sense. But I want to separate the topics. One thing is the presence of those pay-to-win mechanics, and on the other hand, the objective, amazing abstract complexity of the gameplay mechanics that I'm taking a look at, and the reason why I think you all love the game is just that I'm rationalizing each of the elements, as I've said previously, with the intrinsic and extrinsic stat systems in that sense. Um, so yeah, pretty much I'm beginning to see why you love the game so much. Another element that I mentioned precisely in the Kalos boss fight, I loved the Kalos boss fight above all because it forced the player to do strategic positioning to avoid the attacks and get heals rather than just spamming potions like in Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, for example, in that sense. So I can see those reasons. And yeah, what I would do is kind of like separate the pay-to-win elements from the core abstract complexity of the gameplay mechanics. In that sense. You mentioned to me that it was every 2 years, correct? That they do the event. I wouldn't do that. That is absolutely crazy. Besides 2 years, it's absolutely brutal. In Star Wars: The Republic and World of Warcraft, for example, every 2 years is kind of like brutal. We have events, but they just give you cosmetic gear, not the top gear in the game. That would be crazy. That is absolutely crazy, as you are all mentioning to me. For example, I've been grinding, but in 2 months I could get the maximum gear rating, pretty much a month and a half in Star Wars: The Republic. I returned, and in 2 months, doing the operations, I had to grind and everything off stream and learn mechanics and everything. But every 2 years, do an event that forces you to get part of the main gear rating line of the this one is turned into the main gear rating line. I wouldn't do that. I was mentioning I will use those events only for a specific for cosmetic armor. I don't know, maybe a pet or a mount. Those things. That's how World of Warcraft and Star Wars: The Republic work. This one, I think it exponentially exaggerated the the extrinsic portion of the loot system in that sense. But the core gameplay mechanics, I can see why you think it's so brilliant as a game. As I've said, the strategic positioning of the Calyx boss fight, the precise point and click system. It's a shame. A pity. They bought 2 new mounts in the game. They brought, they brought 2 new. I didn't see the R. Each for 300 euros. Gold damage. Shit. For real. For real, Patriot. 300 euros. Wow. No, that's brutal. That's the price of 4 or 5 games, even more, depending on what you get. No, that's absolutely brutal in that sense. That's absolutely brutal. Well, in Star Wars: The Old Republic, they did something. They did something back in the day. Nowadays, it has fortunately changed, but they did something like that. They sold an item that you couldn't equip purple gear quality items without an artifact of authorization. They did that, but it was you could farm some weeks and you could get it in that sense. You could get it. So yeah, at that point, isn't it better to just pay? Well, in my case, I would choose paying the $60 and calling it a day, and no pay to win mechanics in that sense, because that what you are mentioning to me is not even a whole game. Like, that is absolutely crazy. I would tie the mounts to events, but not the main line of the gear, because as I was mentioning, District and Patrick, the you distort the reward, the reward punishment system of the game if you do that. That's absolutely crazy. It makes you want to quit the game more than anything. It makes you want to quit the game more than anything, because first of all, it's not rewarding the player for being good at it. First, terrible reward system. You are not encouraging the player to improve at the game. Just give me money, you get the mount. It's absolutely terrible. I think it's the worst. But then precisely it's an astronomical crazy price in that sense. That's why I liked how games were back in the day. I don't know if I bet it happens to both of you. But they were back in the day. That's why you would buy the game, pay that price, and you would get the physical disc, you get the manual, you get everything, and you also get a full experience. It is true that they didn't last as much as these ones. That's the thing. They didn't last as much as these ones. In that sense, modern games tend to last much more, which is positive, always. But still, you can find a balance. For example, I highly recommend it. I don't know if you tried it. I know that District played Diablo 3, and I bet he played Diablo 2 as well. But for example, Patrick, I don't know if I recommended it to you or to another viewer. I think it was because last Tuesday it was like 5 of you, and I don't remember which one I suggested it to. The Median Excel mod of Diablo 2. You just get that, and it will be endless, and pretty much you won't have pretty much any problem. I think that's the perfect system in that sense, because Diablo 2 with the Median Excel mod, it will have the perks of a modern game. Damn it, of a modern game. I should have waited for a heal there. I think they're gonna kill me. Yeah, they killed me. Well, no matter. I think it's the perfect system. I think it's the perfect system in that sense. Okay, Peter, the biggest satisfaction, besides the obvious grind, and then the rewards, the mounts, and the mounts, They were connected to events, and they were worth it because they were very nice with good animation. With a good animation, they were iconic because everyone knew that yeah, you farmed that and you earned it. Indeed, that's the feeling that you earned it for farming. That's the system of precisely Star Wars: Your Republic and World of Warcraft. What the fuck? Map creation failed. Please try again later. Error code 42. This is the third time this happens to me. People. How could I quit? I think I just minimized it. The mouse we're connecting to the event. Yes, precisely. But not the main gear. At least I think I wouldn't tie the main gear to events. Alt F4 and restart. Yeah, yeah, I know it. I think I have my Steam page here because I access it through Steam. One sec. I think I had Steam open here, please. I know you cannot see it. Give me a second, eh? I haven't forgotten. Don't worry. Um, Let me access the library. It was, hang on a second, I have to find it. It was D. Let me find D. Drakensang. There we go. There we go. It should be here. There we go. That map generation. Okay, one sec. There we go. Should be here. It was. There we go. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Okay, what was I heard? The one that district told me. There we go. Heard. There we are. It should go to full screen immediately. Okay. No, what I was mentioning precisely, I wouldn't tie Patrick the main gear. I mean, for example, in Star Wars: Your Republic, the other game you saw me play on Thursdays, in a month and a half, I farmed the raids. I farmed heavily, right? Yeah, I farmed the raids heavily, and I could get to the max gear rating, and and they use augments, yes, but that's just a matter of money. You just accumulate money and you can get them. It takes you time, but it even so, it's not tied to an event. The main line of gear, then the pets, as you say. Yes, there are pets that you can. Hey, this one is golden. Looks quite good. Can I use it, or is it a quest item? Nope, I can use it. I get to keep it, I guess. Hey, looks quite good. It's our first gold, people. Look at that. Look at that. I still remember my first gold in Star Wars Europe. Movement speed, armor value. No, the other one increases damage. And then yeah, I have to sell. I know this one is not a vendor. This is kind of like a bolt. Okay, like a pretty much. Now I read it. Give me a sec. Command quality. Let's sell all of these and keep going. Brings a fallen player back to life. I guess this is useful. There were two main rounds. Two main mounts. There were two main mounts. The slow and the fast. The slow mounts were the horses, the easier to get mounts. And if you put really effort to events like DTU, probably the previous one that you mentioned to me, Sam, about the gears and everything, you could get a fast dragon. So mounts were actually worth anything. Now, as you can check in the calendar, they cap it level 55 era mounts and recolor them. That's what they did in Star Wars: Your Republic. That's what they did in Star Wars: Your Republic. That's what they did. Back then, having extra speed was it's exactly the same. Having extra speed, for having extra speed, you needed specific mounts, and now they all scale with training. You train, and and they recolor a lot of the armor in that case, and the mounts as well. Pretty much in that sense. So Patrick, you must come back to the game every few years for the events in that sense. Because because of what you are describing, once you hit the level cap, there's a lack of content. The problem, your level is too low, and level 78. It's the ones that I farmed with district. Okay, okay. Quartz crystal damage. Okay, let's sell. There we go. I should be close to that puppy by now. To that. Ah, no. We still, well, we are 300. We exponentially increased it. Okay. I need to remember the other one that Ambra told me the other stream to get the inventory expansion. You must return to the game every few years. So the problem is lack of content actually for you. It's a lack of content in that sense. I can see it's a lack of content more than anything. Because if it had kind of like new raids, you would do them, right? For if it had new raids, imagine that they release new raids, new dungeons instead of the events. Most of the player base would be much more kind of like consistent in that sense. Yeah, after 4 or 5 months of constantly playing, nothing really changes. You get a decent character, you farm anything basically, solo, and in my case, I overmaxed everything besides the mythic set in 8 months. Well, then it's a problem of lack of content. Have you considered trying other games? I have had viewers that have told me similar cases with other games, and and at that point, the thing I would suggest is trying other games. I can suggest you, or for example, over at Discord the other day, District, I suggested some games. District mentioned to me that they were quite expensive, and another viewer suggested another one, for example, that was quite good for $2, I think it was. And what I would suggest you at that point is to try others. You told me you had played others in that sense. So you have kind of like a rotation between them. You have kind of like a rotation even. For example, um, the one he suggested was what I could suggest you. All of the games developed by Soldak, which is Dean's Curse. They were suggested in my Discord precisely some yesterday, pretty much yesterday and on Sunday precisely. I watch all the Drakensang online videos and cry under a blanket. He said, "No, Patrick, no, 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 no. I bet there will be reverse engineered servers eventually. I bet there will be some reverse engineered servers. I bet they will. There will be. There will be. The same happens to me with Star Wars: Your Republic before update 3.5. When the save was Yuria. No. In that sense, I bet there will be. There will be. Just think of it like that. I think this game is popular enough as to encourage people to, and I see so many of you love it that I bet it encourages people to 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 do a reverse engineered server of it, and then you'll be able to go back to it. But it can be some years. I heard learning new games, so I play League of Legends and Drakensang Online, two of my childhood games. Yeah, but I can assure you that precisely learning new games constantly. I know it can be like that, but trust me, learning new games constantly, it has an effect on the brain that is extremely positive, because it's forcing you to constantly relearn the mechanics, and that affects the the cortex of the brain to be more flexible. Believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy. Like learning a new language forces you to use different parts of the brain. Playing constantly, trying out different games and learning precisely. I know it can be a slog, but if they are not constantly grindy, I can tell you that you will see that you will look back. You will probably look back if you do it and see that there was no point crying under a blanket for the original version of Drakensang Online, even if it's still your favorite. I'm not saying that it won't remain your favorite, because it happens to me with Star Wars: Your Republic. It will be your favorite without a doubt, forever. But you will have an alternative until either there's a reverse engineered server. There's a reverse engineered server in that sense. In that sense, and you can go back to that era that you loved so much. In that sense, that's what I can tell you. For example, the BTH event is coming, so for 14 days, no other games for me now. No, I understand it perfectly. But if what you told me before, that maybe there was not enough content, and then you farmed everything in 6 months, for those periods when they happen in the future, I suggest you Diablo 2. Have you played Diablo 2? Diablo 2, have you played it? The original, huh? The original Diablo 2. Have you played it, for example? The original, not the new version that they released. The original Diablo 2, for example. Nah, well. This game, I played 3 and the new one and 4th. Okay. I highly recommend you play Diablo 2. At least a secondary. You can still do the event, but whenever, just you can do it kind of like as an experiment. Then maybe if you don't like it, then that's it. You can find it. It's a very old game. You can find it on the Blizzard launcher, I think, but you can find it pretty much anywhere. It's kind of like a classic piece of software. You can grab Diablo 2. You can grab Diablo 2 and pretty much just, I don't know, I'm like a grandpa. I always like the slowness and the endless grind in Drakensang Online. I like playing in teams, talk, hard maps, just hitting like zombies. Well, but there are games that have that. For example, Path of Exile. Have you tried Path of Exile? That one is online, is free. That one you have nothing to lose, and it has what they called a positive, an ethical free-to-play model. For example, Path of Exile. I can assure you that that if you play Path of Exile, you will find all of those things that you just described in the last message. Path of Exile. Yeah, I tried, but Path of Exile is too flashy. Makes my eyes bleed legit. You didn't like Path of Exile? My lord. It's amazing. That one is amazing. That one is the one responsible for reviving the genre. But well, the father of the genre, Diablo 2, a classic. You can't go wrong with it. The old version, not the new resurrected version. The old version, you apply the Median Excel mod to it. You apply the Median Excel mod, it can last you forever. The other one, Titan Quest, Torchlight 2, all of the ones, I'll try it. I wanted to start Path of Exile yesterday, I think. Path of Exile, Diablo 2 with the Median Excel mod. Path of Exile or Path of Exile 2? Begin with the first one. Begin with the first one if you like. The second one will be more flashy in that sense. Path of Exile 1, I played the whole complete main story. I didn't get to end game or anything. I just did the main story. I just like doing The main story, and only with Diablo 2, yes, I do Endgame and Titan Quest. The ones that I'm recommending to you, any of these, Titan Quest, Diablo 2, Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, all of those, it's pretty much the same formula as Drakensang Online. And maybe for those periods of time when you don't have the events that you told me that there was no content, you go to those. You can choose, but I can assure you that, for example, Path of Exile has the best free-to-play model ever created. Ever. You won't have to deal with pay-to-win mechanics. You won't have to deal with pay-to-win mechanics. I highly suggest Path of Exile. Like, there are no pay-to-win mechanics. They are just cosmetic, voluntary, if the player wants to. Believe it or not, it's like that, and it's so good that the community supports it, kind of like out of their will. Trust me. So, they won't require you to pay a cent, a single cent for that one. In that sense, Path of Exile. For example, one of the positive aspects. Then, otherwise, well, it's a bit more old school. I would say Diablo 2 with the Median Excel mode. You can find it anywhere, pretty much. So, and it can be endless. Just like you described, that it has to be slow, on the slow side in terms of the gameplay mechanics. It needs to have endless grind, and playing in teams, talk hard maps, and hitting like it's Path of Exile. It's pretty much Path of Exile is a bit of a solo game. The other one could be the new one, the one that was Korean, Lost Ark. Lost Ark could be, but the style that you like is that of Diablo 2. I can assure you that. Instead of Diablo 3, you played the wrong ones. Diablo 4 and 3. You had to play Diablo 2 precisely. If you like the slowness of this game and the others, in that sense. That's why I recommend you those. And Path of Exile precisely is the one responsible for reviving the combat style of Diablo 2 rather than Diablo 3. That is more hack and slashy in that sense. So yeah, pretty much. I recommend you highly Path of Exile. The only one of those elements could be the playing in teams part. For that, Lost Ark for that. But as for the rest, I suggest you play Diablo 2 because it's the father of the genre. It will bring a smile to your face. Finally discovering all of the elements. The original one, not the resurrected version. With the Median Excel mode. Then other ones, Torchlight 2 with the Synergies mod. Titan Quest as well. But the ones that I mentioned to you, especially Diablo 2, in terms of the single player ones, will bring a smile to your face because you will see where all of the elements of Drakensang Online are originated from. Diablo 2, you can find it anywhere, as I've said, and apply the Median Excel mod or the Path of Diablo mod, and there are even some versions that work online in that sense. So Diablo 2, Path of Exile would be top recommendations. Then, if you feel like some that are still endless, Torchlight 2 with the Synergies mod. Thank you. Now I have to. However you may want to get it, doesn't matter. I don't encourage that on stream. I can do that, but it's a father of the genre, the original one, pretty much, and pretty much apply the Median Excel mode because otherwise you will beat it way too fast at the pace you like. Playing because of what I see. The Median Excel mode. Just apply the Median Excel mode or the Path of Diablo mod if you want it even more grindy. on clothes and on BGA hips, so no money. I can understand it perfectly, and that's the case. Okay, yeah, clothes are expensive nowadays. Or maybe you mean for in game for Drakensang Online. Well, regardless of the situation, don't. Uh, as I've said, it's a classic. It's a game from 2 years, so I don't encourage you to do what you said in the previous message. You can find it over at the Blizzard Launcher. But whatever the case, in that sense, apply the median Excel mode, click W. Yeah, no, I understand you. I understand you. The apply the median Excel mode is the only thing, because otherwise you will beat it and you'll hate me. You'll say this game finishes in 2 seconds. Get the old version, huh? The one that is in 2D, because the modern one will be flash. It will look amazing and everything for you, but you will beat it in 2 minutes, and they lower the difficulty, so you will hate it in that sense. Get the old 2D version, the old 2D version, and apply median Excel mode or Path of Diablo if you want it to be really, really grindy and endless in that sense. If you want it to be really, really grind, I have a whole, well, in case you like, in case you'd like it, I have a whole channel in my Discord with recommendations, with game recommendations. If you'd like, you won't find any more complete. If I have a whole channel full of those. Is what I can offer you. And also in the links down below, if you hover your mouse over it, I have the integral history of PC game genres. I have the integral history of PC game genres over at YouTube, where it says integral history of PC game genres. That'll lead you to. I go one by one. You go to the Isometric Action RPG section, you ignore the rest, and there you have all the recommendations. Just so. But what I can tell you is Diablo 2 with the median Excel mode. Remember to apply the mod because it will make first the game compatible. It will fix all compatibility issues. Median Excel will keep the original essence of the game, but will make it endless as you like it. Median Excel mode. Diablo 2, the original in 2D plus median Excel mode. Then I can recommend you others. It's what I do precisely on stream besides analyzing. I recommend names to viewers. So precisely, I spent 15 years in my free time when I was not at law school or teaching English or now developing software or whatever. In my free time, some half an hour a day, throughout 15 years, I spent it analyzing the libraries of the different genres. That's why I cover all of those. I cover all of those games basically. Span across consoles. I haven't played all of them, of course. No one has enough time in our real lives for that shit. But basically, I like knowing. Not. I like knowing as much as I can about the libraries. In that sense, I always say that the more one can explain why things happen, and all of the variety that the different genres have to offer, the better the experience. That's basically that. It's basically that. So I recommend it to you and to anyone else, Diablo 2 with the median Excel mod, or if you want it to be like Path of Exile, the Path of Diablo mod. I would go for median Excel because it also fixes the technical aspect, keeps the original essence of the game, and you can also get Path of Exile with a perfect model for without pay to win mechanics, so it's the best. So what's this? So I can activate your favorite rewards now. Okay, let's ignore all of this. Let me check the time, people, a sec. Oh, time flew. 9 o'clock already. Would you look at that, people? 9 o'clock already. Time flew with all of you. Phantom, District, Patrick, all of you. Time flew. Chatting and analyzing, and the analysis on top of everything. Time certainly flew. Okay, after BGH, it's the event I tried. Thank you. Kill Harold, the boss end of the map. Ah, that would be a fitting end. Harold? Do I have it in a quest? Do I have it in a quest? You'll have to guide me a bit in that sense, Patrick, because is it part of a quest? Herald? This one? The Herald of the Underworld. This one? Herald, or was it Harold? Harold, Herald, Herald. No, Harold the Herald. Is this one pretty much the ending of the Herald of the Underworld? Is it this one? Yeah, it's nice to finish with a boss fight. More or less. Is it here? This one? End of the map. Yeah, but it could be. Has to be this one, right? I don't know. I know the yellow quests are the mains. Yeah, precisely. Well, we can try it. It should be this one. Let's see. Wait. Flying Energies told me that. Oh, I'm almost there. Level 31. Okay, I'll be a bit more minutes to see if I can. If I find the boss here in this dungeon. Let me see. Yeah, I have some. Let's see. Oh, damn! I was about to and you will find it in the next. Okay. Let me check. With the new armor. Yeah, because otherwise I have to go back all the way, right? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, good idea. Ah, yeah, I remember this one. Yes, I went by it some. I was in this map when I was 12 years ago. You have pretty good memory if you remember that moment. If you remember that moment. No, I still remember in Star Wars: New Republic 10 years ago, precisely the same. For example, the first PvP match, and not the first. The first dungeon. The first dungeon, I remembered it the other day, but now no. I don't remember the first dungeon. I think it was... Yeah, now I remember it. It was Directive 7. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I remember it now. With the Jedi shadow. With the Jedi shadow assassin. Okay. Yeah. Well, needless to say, Patrick, if you like World of Warcraft style, you can reverse engineer and have your own World of Warcraft server like I do, because the one I pay a subscription to is Star Wars: New Republic, and it's my main MMORPG, and then the others I reverse engineer them in that sense to explore the gameplay mechanics. Mostly, I don't get into the end game or anything. Like, for example, World of Warcraft, you can have a reverse engineer version of World of Warcraft, for example, in that sense. Things like that. Hey, then I need to analyze the soundtrack of this game, because I like, it wasn't this one the boss, right? Ah, yeah, it was this one, but it wasn't kind of like a complete boss fight. Okay, it was a semi-boss. Okay, perfect. It was this one, right? Look at that, people. We are improving. We were doing the stupid basic attacks. Or was it there another one? There was another one. There was a skull. Wait, no. I'm saying something stupid. No, there was another one. I think the one that you must be mentioning. Hang on. First, let me finish those quests. Hang on. Let's do them in order, because otherwise then I will be back here like an idiot. Let me finish that. Hang on. Let's do them. That one. There. Hang on. One more there. And one more here. Precisely. Okay. And the boss... Alright, but I have to go back, report, and then it will send me to the boss. Then it will send me to the boss. Again. Then it will send me to the boss again. Okay. Yeah, I remember it was here. I was here some minutes ago. Yeah. Okay. But then it will send me back to this boss, I bet. If there was a way to return to a specific point in a dungeon, that would be sweet. This one, you mean, right? Yeah, it was here. This one. Right? This one. Has to be this one. Yeah, okay. I'll do it, but then we'll do it as part of the main story again. Then we'll do it then as part of the main story, because then the quest updates and I have to go back. This already happened to me. Even I don't know if I will need to farm to 31 to ooh, to have the Frost Nova. Yeah, I bet I'll need to farm for this. All right, let's see if the... Hey, at least I'm dealing some damage. Hey, well, it's a one-hit kill. Interesting. Okay, we can leave it for next time. Okay, we can leave it for next time. It killed me in one blow. Precisely. I thought that was going to happen. Yeah, I'll need to farm a bit. Besides, it will use S and God to kill that. We'll do it. Besides, I need to the essences and good to kill that. Okay. God and good to kill that. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I'll have to return. Next Tuesday, I'll have to return because it's probably the ending of this chapter, and I need to farm a bit more because look at that, I'm almost at 31. Let me level up to 31 because that will give me the Frost Nova, and that will allow me to break the armor. On top of the essences, of course. We'll leave this for next time. We'll leave to talk to him for next time. Sorry, Patrick. I would keep playing constantly, but I have to get to my job precisely. I have to get to develop software and correct some exams, both of them at the same time. So yeah. Otherwise, I would stay forever with all of you. I would stay forever with all of you, playing all of the games together. It's the thing. That's the thing. Let me get to 31 real quick. Oh yeah. In that sense, we'll do it next Tuesday. That one. You kill me in one blow. We can try it next Tuesday. Sorry, but that's the thing. That's the thing. I did kind of like the whole chapter today, huh? Though we are progressing quite fast, if you ask me. There we go, 31. I'm gonna go to sleep. Good night, brother. Good luck. Was nice talk with you. No, hope it's enjoyable. Hope. I'm sorry, as I've said, if the part of the analysis maybe it's quite interesting for some, but maybe it may be boring for you or others. In that sense, it was nice. Thanks for the chat as well. I enjoy all of your company all the time, and also thanks to District, of course, to Phantom, to District and to Phantom as well as you, Patrick, of course, for the three of you visiting me today. Thanks from the bottom of my heart for chatting with me and and helping me with the game, with the pets and everything. So, as We made it to level 31. We'll analyze the skill tree and everything. I'll leave this ready here. I'll leave this here. I know I cannot upgrade it, but I can use the ability. I can use it. I can use it. I can use it. So we'll put this here. So we'll have the Frost Nova there to break the armor and complement there. Okay, people, it's been my pleasure sharing this 5th day of metaphysical analysis with all of you of Drakensang online. It's late to me. I have to go to work. As I said, next time we are doing the boss and everything. On Thursday we'll continue with Star Wars: Your Republic. So see you all on Thursday, and then on Tuesday we continue. Also thanks to Ambra that visited me on Thursday, and to all of you, of course, all of the people, great people over at Discord, of course, Scarlet Dragoon, Crowbar, Keichig, Sayona, District as well. You all encourage me to continue showcasing all of these amazing games that certainly deserve much more praise. I remember you. I remember you. I remember you. So, people, it's been a pleasure. See you all on Thursday. Have a great week. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thanks for visiting. Be my pleasure. Bye bye.